Some say the biggest mistake a New Yorker can make is to call it home, for in doing so is to concede that we will endure an uncomfortable life of unwanted and unexpected changes, and with such speed as to find ourselves more often spectators than participants in its thriving whirlwind.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know any.
Nothing is permanent here. Everything is for sale, and most often subject to the whims of those with influence. No community was ever established here that didn't have to put up a fight. Nor was there an individual who ever dreamed here that didn't have the odds stacked against him. This is the ultimate truth of New York, and to rage against that is like cursing the waves of the ocean for swelling and crashing. People today seem deeply concerned that the city is entering a turbulent new epoch of hardship. It is amusing to hear such sentiments, for they are voiced as if New York has ever existed outside a state of struggle and conflict. There has not been one trade ever made on Wall Street that did not enrich one man at the expense of another, nor one building ever built that didn't displace an individual or a group. New York has always been a zero-sum game, from the moment Peter Minuit scammed the Lenape out of their land to the privileging of big-box retail over small business. Neither has there ever been a year in the city's history that hasn't in some way been characterized and shaped by some form of conflict. The British versus the Dutch, America versus the British, the Dead Rabbits versus the Bowery Boys, the Protestants versus the Catholics, the municipal police versus the metropolitan police, the abolitionists versus the know-nothings, the Irish versus the Conscription Act, Tammany versus the Reformers, the robber barons versus the progressives, pro-immigration versus nativism, the temperance movement versus the Jazz Age, LaGuardia versus Tammany Hall, Robert Moses versus the public, the mafia versus the feds, big tech versus small business, gentrifiers versus preservationists. It's all been 400 years of big dreamers versus powerless cynics, number crunchers versus risk takers, party goers and church goers and artists and bankers and pigeons and sparrows and squirrels and rats and conservatives and liberals. And most of us wouldn't have it any other way. The good times of the 19 years since 9/11 came with historic low crime, but also historically high rent and diminishing culture. The bad times of the 1970s came with low rents, but accompanied by a cultural geyser. Suffice it to say, there were never any good times in New York, but there were never any bad times. There have only been times. Shifts in the economy, shifts in mood, and an ever-changing landscape of varying circumstances and exchanges of influence. To be New Yorkers, to understand and accept this, and live according to your best intentions despite these tidal shifts, and to hang on for dear life when the going gets turbulent.
New York has bounced back before, right? You've compared it in your article, I read the article at length, to 9/11 and the crime wave in the 70s and 80s, but you said this time is different. Yes, it's different because the world has never really experienced what we're experiencing now, but if you just compare it to some other things, New York was in tough times and it did come back.
You know what? New York City has never suffered through a 10 to 20% loss in population, which is what's going to happen now. I mean, already apartment vacancies are at an all-time high, and that's not even counting what's going to happen when...
In his recent op-ed for the New York Times, James Altucher lamented that as businesses fail, so too do landlords, and in consequence, the city's tax rivers run dry, the city lays off critical employees and services, like the fire department, the police, transit workers, medical services, all decline dramatically. Crime increases, insurance policies skyrocket, opportunity for work drops off a cliff. While all these things are true, they fail to factor in that New York is and always has been a monopoly board upon which the wealthy impart their influence, and for the public to take their stand. J.P. Morgan knew this when the city went into panic mode in the 1870s, as did Vanderbilt, who prepared the city for the 20th century with a railroad building scheme. When the people get fed up, they elect reformers who are brave enough to give the city back to the interests of the people, but smart enough to stop them from crippling its economy in the process. It is clear that hard days are upon us, and by days I mean years. The one thing that the city's future hinges on, though, is its willingness of the public to endure it and to elect leadership that prioritizes growth and opportunity over woke racial pandering. When Henry Hudson got off his boat, the Half Moon, on September the 11th, 1609, he saw not one skyscraper, nor did he see the Brooklyn Bridge. He saw no lights on Broadway, nor urgent trading on Wall Street, nor did he hear the sirens of cops, nor smell pizza in the air. But I know somehow that he saw the same thing that everyone sees when they visit New York. Whatever it is he saw, I see it too. And it's not something that any disease nor hapless mayor can thwart. It will always be here, and for that reason, so will I. Everything will change in New York. Everything. What it feels like, its shape, its color, its character. But also, nothing will change. It will always be what Hudson saw it to be. It will always be a canvas upon which to paint our vision for American business, community, and culture.